Hello. This is just going to be a quick intro to explain exactly what's going on with this video. A little while back I said that I would never divide my Quentin Tarantino movie reviews unless it was Kill Bill. And I stuck by that when I put out my Pulp Fiction review a few weeks ago. Might be a month at this point, because that review is 3.5 hours long. But I know that there's a lot of people that just aren't going to be willing to sit through 3.5 hours of a bisexual atheist with Asperger's talking about a movie. And to show that I'm not a total asshole, I decided that I would divide this review, which kind of works because the review itself, even in its full length, is kind of in segments. And all these videos will be in a playlist. So yeah, for those who don't have the full time, you now can watch 4 videos, each of them about an hour or less, and I hope you enjoy what I have to say about Pulp Fiction, and here's the review. Today's review is, well, the movie I'm going to talk about now is one of my all-time favorite movies ever. This movie is in my top 10 favorite. No, it's in my top 5. Pulp Fiction by Quentin Tarantino. My favorite director. If you remember last year, I reviewed Reservoir Dogs, and I shot that review shortly after my 20th birthday, and it's been about 2 weeks since I turned 21, and I wanted to get to this sooner, but I've had a lot of stuff going on. But either way, I'm here and I'm ready to talk about one of my all-time favorite fucking films. And the way I'm going to do this review is a little different. I love Pulp Fiction so much that I don't want to miss anything. I want to talk about the whole film. So what I'm going to do is, the movie is done in segments. The whole film is pretty much 3, 4, if you count the opening, separate stories. They're all connected by a bunch of characters. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to cover each of the 4 stories in this movie a day at a time. And today I'm going to talk about the opening story, which doesn't really have a title, but it serves as the setting for the three stories that follows. But Pulp Fiction, I love this movie so much. I take a lot from it. Whenever I try to write, in some way, I always think back to Pulp Fiction or another Tarantino film. Just because the writing and the dialogue and the style that Quentin uses for his movies has had a huge impact on me. For the past several years, Quentin Tarantino, he has been my #1 favorite director. He's been my idol. I love watching every film he's made. I love analyzing. I love studying. It always fascinates me, the little things that I miss the first time I see it, but then I pick up after repeated viewings. To this day, there has not been a QT film that I have not loved. And next to loving Quentin Tarantino's movies and admiring his style and the way he makes them, as I said before a few times, he and we share the exact same birthday, March 27th. So it may sound silly, but I feel a certain connection to his work and the way he will talk about movies. I probably sound like an idiot right now, but I don't care. I got the positive emotions coming from this film, and this DVD, I got this for Christmas in 2009, and I watched it maybe 2 days after I got it. So I've had this DVD for a little over 6 years now. Wow. Time flies. And I've loved it every fucking year that I've had it. And a later Christmas day, I also got this booklet, this book that's pretty much, I think, the original screenplay that he wrote for Pulp Fiction. A few things in it are different from what's in the final film, so I know it was probably the first draft. And Tarantino's style, his writing style, I don't know if he was the first director to do this, but he was the first director to do this in a way that was able to make it mean something. I'm talking about his dialogue, such as characters in Quentin Tarantino films. They'll often have scenes that go on for 5, maybe 10 minutes, where they just talk, and they just talk about things that don't really connect to the main plot, but what they talk about is just stuff that normal people talk about. They talk about pop culture, they talk about people, they talk about relationships, they talk about the jobs that they do. Almost all main characters in Quentin Tarantino's early films are criminals, so that's usually what they talk about. But also, this is what's cool, almost all the characters in his movies are movie buffs. So they talk about really old films that you can see is Quentin Tarantino's film buffness seeping through to his writing. And it's so cool to hear about these old-time movies and TV shows. And most modern audiences, people my age, maybe a few years younger, will probably not know about these older films that the characters are talking about, but by having them referenced in his films, Tarantino is in some way introducing, or at least suggesting, the idea of these movies to the younger generation. When I first saw Pulp Fiction, it really kind of blew me away, just how awesome it was. And I have this book called 1001 movies you must see before you die, and it's an old edition at this point. I forget who wrote the review, but in the review for Pulp Fiction there was this great quote to describe it. A 14-year-old couch potato's wet dream. And I was 14 when I saw Pulp Fiction. I can be, most of the time, a real couch potato. I haven't had that many wet dreams in my life, but I'd say that quote fits. And I know I'm going on and on before I actually talk about the film itself, but I can't help it. I just have to. I don't give a fuck. It's my show. I can say and do what I want here, and everyone else is just invited to come along for the ride. And a little history about the making of Pulp Fiction. Reservoir Dogs, it's great, but it wasn't a huge success when it came out. But it was enough to impress studio executives, I guess, and movie producers to want to get on board and see what Quentin made next. And Pulp Fiction, all in all, is actually not that big of a film. It was made for only $8 million, which, given the actors it got, that it had in it, and the scale of the film, it's a little surprising, actually. I mean, it just shows what you can accomplish if you have good talent, if you have the right skills. You can make a movie seem bigger than it actually is. And even still, what happens in the movie actually isn't, let's say, Steven Spielberg sized, but it's still reasonably big enough that you wouldn't guess that it didn't cost that much. And actually, it didn't cost really $8 million. $5 million of the budget went to all the actors' salaries. So in actuality, it only cost $3 fucking million to make. These movies and a few other movies that came out around that time in the early 90s, Robert Rodriguez's El Mariachi, Kevin Smith's Clerks, all these films, along with QT's early movies, they just brought so much fucking inspiration. They brought so much entertainment. These movies, in many ways, changed the way independent films were viewed and could be made. And Pulp Fiction finally, 3 years ago, earned its place in the Library of Congress. 2013 was the day it happened, and all I can think is, about fucking time. I swear I'm gonna get to talking about the movie soon, but I still have a few other things I just want to get out of the way first and talk about. Pulp Fiction was, as always, written and directed by Quentin Tarantino, and Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction are the only Tarantino films that he directed where there's a co-writing credit. Like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction was sort of co-written by filmmaker Roger Avary. He's not billed as writing the screenplay with Quentin, but just for coming up with some of the stories that were used in the film. But that credit was enough to win them both an Academy Award. And their Oscar acceptance speech is quite memorable for how awkward it is. But Roger Avary, I like Roger Avary. He hasn't done that many movies. I know Roger Avary and Quentin Tarantino, they've parted ways, mainly because Avary feels that Quentin took credit for most of his ideas. But when they did collaborate, they got some good stuff out. And Quentin Tarantino, from what I've heard, he's kind of a jerk in real life. Not the worst, just he can be a bit self-absorbed. But I can let that slide because nobody's perfect, and I'm kind of self-absorbed myself. at times. I do care about people, but when it comes to movies and being creative, that's kind of where I am in the self-absorbed category. But Roger Avery, for anyone who doesn't know, he also made the movie Killing Zoe, and Avery apparently got pretty butthurt when people assumed that that was a Tarantino film because he was like the executive producer. Avery would later reference this in his latter film, The Rules of Attraction. And in Rules of Attraction, there's this scene where a film buff character, who later ends up being an accomplice to date rape, bitches about a movie that Tarantino produced, but people thought it was made by him. So there. But their collaboration worked out pretty well, and I encourage you to look up their Oscar acceptance speech for Pulp Fiction. It's pretty funny. And the film was produced by Quentin's longtime producing partner, Lawrence Bender, who you might know also as the producer of Good Will Hunting, the only non-Tarantino film that Bender has gotten an Oscar nomination for. But pretty much, other than the screenplay by Tarantino and Avery, Pulp Fiction did not win any other Oscars. It's not a bad thing, just a little surprising, because it's fucking great. I will repeat that till death. I'm usually critical of things getting beaten to the ground, but I'm prepared to do that for this review. And the other main behind-the-scenes person I'm going to talk about is the late Sally Menke. Her last name's spelled M-E-N-K-E, but her name's Sally Menke, and until she died, she edited every one of Tarantino's films. The last one she did was Inglourious Basterds. And other than QT's work, she also, from what I read, she was one of the editors on the 1990 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film. Which, and this may surprise a few people, maybe not, but I really like that movie. I wasn't a huge Ninja Turtles fan growing up, but I saw a reasonable amount of the 2003 cartoon, and I watched the first movie, and the first movie was pretty good. So now, it's time to talk about the actual fucking movie. And, by the way, if people have been keeping up with me, they will know this. I'm now 21, so I can finally do something that I've been waiting to do for a while. Talk about a movie while drinking alcohol. See how this works out? If Spoonie can do it, so can I. And who knows? Maybe you'll find me saying something even stupider than what I usually say. Ass, fuck, shit, titty, cock, cunt, retard, nigger, faggot. Let's start. Pulp Fiction opens with a text quote from some dictionary. I can't remember which one it was, but the quote pretty much explains the two terms that the word pulp is most associated with, like oranges and the term for the old school noir novels of way before the 1940s, I think. I'm not a history buff, and remember, I didn't finish high school. But neither did Quentin. Pulp Fiction opens in a diner, and it opens with these two characters played by Tim Roth and Amanda Plummer. Tim Roth, you will remember, was Mr. Orange in Reservoir Dogs. And Amanda Plummer, she was also... I haven't seen much of her work, other than Pulp Fiction, but she was also in The Fisher King as Robin Williams' awkward love interest. Tim Roth is using his natural British accent in Pulp Fiction. Amanda Plummer, I think she's speaking with an American accent. I can't... Now I'm thinking back to her accent. It was a little hard to distinguish, but Tim Roth's British and she might be, and they're two characters who are robbers. They break into stores and just hold them up. And they're in a diner having coffee and cigarettes, which I'm not sure there are any diners these days that allow you to smoke anymore. But yeah, they're having coffee and cigarettes. A great combination in my opinion. And Tim Roth's is like, that's it, I'm done, I'm through. And Amanda Plummer just jokes about, she just teases him, saying, you always say you're done, that you're through, and then you forget about it 20 minutes later. And then Tim Roth goes, well, lighting up, well, the days of forgetting are over, and the days of remembering or doing have started. And they just talk about how robbing liquor stores, like, either they're bored by it or just how it's not the same as it once was. And he talks about how these days you break into banks and you rob banks. And he talks about the idea of someone robbing a bank by threatening to kill a child. And he talks about how there probably isn't even a child being held hostage. And as the scene goes on, it becomes clear he already has forgotten his words of quitting, and they're brainstorming new ways to rob places. And they come up with the idea of, when they rob a place, to not just go for the register, but to try and steal the wallets of the patrons. And it's during the scene, like I said, you get the great Tarantino dialogue back and forth. Very... at least in this movie's universe, very realistic sounding conversation, like you could see two people having this. And they use a lot of racial slurs and a lot of fucks. And this is something that I often think when I listen to the characters say words like nigger or gook. They don't really say nigger in this scene, but they say a lot of Asian slurs, and they say the word Jew in a kind of insultive way. But the way they say it, the way they say all these things, it comes to a point where you think they're not really prejudiced. They're just saying this because they're dicks, or it's just the two of them and they're alone. They're just having a conversation, and some people say that shit when they're alone in a conversation with just one person that they're close to. And when you're with someone you're close to, you just talk shit regardless of how awful it is, because between the two of them it probably doesn't sound that awful. And also, they're criminals. The conversation overall, it's engaging, and it really gets you to understand these two characters just through about 3.5 minutes of talking. And by the end of their conversation, they decide to hold up the diner that they're drinking and smoking in. And for the most part, they seem very pleasant. They seem pretty friendly with each other. And they don't come off as the violent type of people. But as soon as they take out their guns, they immediately put on this act of, stay cool, this is a robbery! And Amanda Plummer, who throughout this scene has been very smiley and sweet, she's actually very sexy in this scene. Just her personality is very appealing, and then all of a sudden, she's screeching and just glaring, saying, I'll kill every motherfucking last one of you! And then, as she does this, just pointing her gun, the frame freezes and we hear the famous opening score. And after that scene, we don't see them for a while. They're characters who, throughout their scene, they call each other by their nicknames. Pumpkin, which is Tim Roth, and Honey Bunny, which is Amanda Plummer. But after this opening scene where they're the main focus, we don't see them for a while, and I will get back to it at a later date. Well, I'll just say that you don't see them for so long after this opening scene that you begin to forget about them. But when they come back later, which I will get to, you'll feel like it all made sense. And then the opening credits start, and the opening credits for Pulp Fiction are their own opening credits. But when watching it, I notice it's very similar to the opening credits from Reservoir Dogs, in the sense that the title scrolls up, and the supporting cast, their credits also scroll up, and the font and the color of the crew credits is very, very similar to Reservoir Dogs. It's almost like it's not the same type and style, but it's so similar, and I just think that's cool. And we get this, after the great doo song, we then suddenly hear the sound of a radio station being changed, and then we get a real nice boogie song. I don't remember what it's called, but it's one of many. Once again, Quentin Tarantino and Brad Jones are the masters of picking great movie soundtracks. And Quentin Tarantino, he picks all the great funky beats. And after the credits finish playing, and like all of his movies, it doesn't end with the written and directed by credit to him. It ends with the producer credit. Why? Because how else is he going to end the film with written and directed by Quentin Tarantino? And after the opening diner and the opening credits, we then cut to two of our main stars, John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson. John Travolta plays Hitman Vincent Vega, and Samuel L. Jackson plays Hitman Jules Winfield. And John Travolta, Pulp Fiction, as everybody has put it, was Travolta's huge comeback. Now, yes, Travolta has done a lot of bad movies, but I think he's a very good actor, given the right film. And he had done a few successful movies before Pulp Fiction, such as the Look Who's Talking series. But Pulp Fiction is what really made him a superstar again. Samuel L. Jackson, he had been in a few movies before this. A lot of good ones actually. Coming to America, Goodfellas, Jurassic Park. But he didn't really become an A-lister until Pulp Fiction. And Samuel Jackson, he's what many would call a late bloomer in Hollywood, because he was already 46 when he played Jules Winfield, which in Hollywood is considered a late age to start becoming popular. But anyway, John Travolta, Samuel Jackson, they both got Oscar nominations for their performances. John Travolta, I think he is great in Pulp Fiction. Excellent. But I'm not totally sure about the Oscar nomination, because John Travolta has given a lot of powerful performances, and he got nominated for Best Actor in a Leading Role. Something that I think people often misconstrued with Pulp Fiction is they say that it was John Travolta's movie. And while it is his comeback, and while he does carry a good chunk of the film, John Travolta is actually not the star of Pulp Fiction. He's top billed, but he's not the star. As I said, Pulp Fiction is done in segments, and each segment a different actor is given the task of leading the film. Travolta handles the leading role for the second story, but for the third and fourth, which I'll get to later, it's handled by Samuel L. Jackson and Bruce Willis. But Travolta, I like Travolta a lot. There have been a lot of movies I've really liked from him. Broken Arrow, Face Off, Saturday Night Fever, Blowout. Just a lot of great films. And what can I really say about Samuel L. Jackson? He's the motherfucking man. Travolta's character, Vincent Vega. Vincent is supposed to be, in Tarantino's movie universe, and Tarantino himself has confirmed this, Vincent Vega is the brother of Vic Vega, who most will probably know, that's the real name of the character Mr. Blonde in Reservoir Dogs. So yeah, those two, Mr. Blonde, the ear guy, stuck in the middle with you, and Travolta in Pulp Fiction, Vincent, they are brothers. And I could totally see it. Their personalities aren't that similar, but facial feature-wise and given what they do for a living, I could totally see these characters being brothers. And Tarantino always wanted to make a movie about the two of them when they were younger, and it's a shame it never happened, but Travolta and Madsen, at that point in their lives, they were a bit old to be playing young versions of themselves. But they did great jobs in the films where they did play the characters. And Vincent Vega, unlike Vic Vega, who was a fucking sadist and just an evil man, Vincent Vega, I wouldn't say he's really evil so much as cold-blooded. He's also, at times, he acts pretty... he doesn't act too childish, but at times he acts a little... he has kind of an immature response in a way. Like, he doesn't really come off as immature, but you can tell he's got a young person's temper. And he gets that pouty look on his face. As the film goes on, it's pretty clear he's pretty much in it for himself. But there are a few people he does care about, but he has his limits for just how much he's gonna put up with something that annoys him. In the first scene with Jules and Vincent, they're in a car on their way to a job, and Vincent goes on about having lived in Amsterdam for many years, and something that a tutor of mine my tutor from high school always wondered was, why was Vincent in Amsterdam? And it is a good question. He says in the film he was there for a few years, but what were the circumstances that put him there? And as he goes on about Amsterdam, he talks about how... I heard it may not be the same as it was when this movie came out, but he talks about how it's legal to smoke hash or weed there, and Samuel L. Jackson as Jules, he's loving the sound of it, saying, "I'm going, there's no question about it." And then he talks with Jules about how the fast food joints work over there. And he talks about, this is the most famous line from the movie, next to Ezekiel 25:17. Vincent says, "You know what they call a quarter pounder with cheese over there? Royale with cheese." And then he says what is one of the funniest and something I relate to a lot. He says, "You know what they put on French fries instead of ketchup over there? Mayonnaise." And Jules is like, "God damn. I fucking hate mayonnaise. So, I'm with you, Jules. God damn." Jules Winfield and Jack Murphy have the right idea. And after their talk about how the fast food joints and the legalization, the legal standing point of hash in Amsterdam works, they arrive at their destination, and apparently they're about to go up to an apartment, and you're not sure at first why they're going up there. You think they might be there to kill somebody, but the way they talk as it goes on, you come to find out that they're kind of there to get something. Just don't know what it is. And on their way up, they have a conversation about their boss's wife. The name of Jules and Vincent's boss is Marcellus Wallace. Badass name. And Marcellus Wallace's new wife, Mia. And Vincent's just asking Jules about shit, and Jules says that Mia was once an actress, and she didn't really go anywhere with her career. And Vincent asks, did she do anything? And Jules says, she did a pilot. And I like this scene a lot, because essentially, through Tarantino's writing, they explain to us, the audience, just what a pilot is. TV shows. Before a TV show is made, the director, writer, the team behind it, they film one episode and show it to either the focus group fuckers or the station producers. Depending on the response, they may make a whole show based around this one episode. And as Jules put it, she was in one of those that didn't go anywhere. And then they talk about how Marcellus is very protective of his new wife, and just like how he can overreact to the simplest things, or things that aren't so simple. They talk about this other gangster who apparently gave the guy's wife a foot massage, and Jules says that that Marcellus threw the guy out a 10-story or 5-story whatever. I can't. A very tall building. And then they talk about whether or not a foot massage justifies the outcome. And then Vincent says that it may be a bit much, but he said he can understand why someone like Marcellus would react that way. Saying it's not the same as eating out their pussy, but it's the same ballpark. And Jules, he says that despite whether or not it was no reaction, he's like, motherfucker do that to me, he better cripple my ass or I come back and kill him. He talks about how he doesn't consider a foot massage too intrusive, and he talks about how he gives women foot massages if they need. He's like, I give my mom a foot massage. Yeah. And Vincent, looking curious, says, you're really good at it, huh? Then he's like, would you ever give a guy a foot massage? And then he's like, fuck you. And he's like, I'm feeling pretty tired. I could use one right now. And Jules just reacts like a pissed off little baby. It's a funny moment, but in my opinion, I think it's kind of adorable. Just that interaction between them. And that's another thing. The interactions between Vincent and Jules, for the most part, it's just normal conversation, and you kind of forget the fact that they are cold-blooded hitmen. Just shows that even the worst people can have some depth, and if not humanity, then human characteristics. And after their whole debate on foot massages, Jules asks, why are you asking about the big man's wife? And Vincent just says, well, he's going out of town, he wants me to take care of her. And he goes, take care of her? And he's like, no, man. And I just like how he just assumes that, yeah, like, could go either way. And it's a good thing I'm doing this review over the course of a few days, because there were definitely some things I forgot to mention. First off, Another reason I love Pulp Fiction so much, it's the movie that inspired me to grow my hair long. I grew out my hair so I could have a ponytail like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. Yeah, but surprisingly, he doesn't wear it in a ponytail until about the 25 or 30-minute mark. But still, his long hair is what inspired me. I wear it down just because that's how he did it in the movie. Samuel L. Jackson, for the role of Jules. Samuel L. Jackson is bald in real life. Completely bald. Whenever you see him with some hair in a movie, it's a wig. And Pulp Fiction's no exception. The hair he has in Pulp Fiction is a Jerry curl. And the wig, like originally Quentin Tarantino wanted an afro, but after seeing a Jerry curl wig, he decided, and Samuel Jackson convinced him, that is the look for Jules. And Samuel Jackson, he really rocks it. His look, he has like pork chop sideburns and a Fu Manchu mustache. And once they get to their destination at this apartment, the door opens and they just stand there looking badass. They go in and we see these dumb college-looking white kids all sitting around having breakfast, and it's obvious that the majority of them are scared and we're not expecting Vincent and Jules to show up. Most of them start quivering like little pussies, little ass cunts. And the kids in this scene are Brett, played by the very great character actor Frank Whaley, who has been in a lot of stuff I've liked. He was Robbie Krieger in Oliver Stone's The Doors, and he was also in the other John Travolta film. I think I talked about him a lot in my Broken Arrow review, because he was good in that. Frank Whaley, he's a very good actor. He can play a likable character, an unlikable character. He can play a Weasley little shit. He can play a scary character. He's very good. The other people in the scene are a guy who doesn't talk much during the scene called Roger, I think, played by Burr Sturs. I'm pretty sure that that's who that motherfucker is. And then the other guy is Marvin. Oh, my bad, I said that they're a bunch of white kids. Marvin, he's the only black guy there. And he's played by Phil Lamar, a very well-respected voice actor. This scene is brilliant. This scene sets up the tone for the majority of the movie perfectly. This scene has Samuel L. Jackson. He just steals the whole fucking show. And Travolta still is there, but he's taking a break on the side a little, letting Jackson do his thing. And Jules, he speaks in a very cool demeanor type of way. He has a lot of confidence, smiles, and the scene is funny, but it's also, this is suspense being built up to a fucking T. It's all through dialogue, and for the most part, Jackson's pretty quiet at the beginning. But you can tell, like, this is the kind of guy who smiles, but at the same time, you know, say the wrong thing and he will explode. And this is also the scene that introduces us. Jules asks Frank Whaley's character Brett what he's having for breakfast, and he says, hamburgers. Which is funny, because I can't think of many fast food joints that serve burgers in the morning. But he asks what kind of burgers, and What kind does he say? The Big Kahuna Burger. Like the shirt? I got it as a gift from the Charlestons. I've thanked them for a few shirts in the past. The Hollywood shirt that I've worn a few times that I wore in my room review, and I wore it for my Reservoir Dogs review. That was them. My Godfather t-shirt, that was also them. My Aunt Nancy, wonderful woman, she got me this along with the Thing t-shirt I wore for the Halloween review. And I asked her if you could get me a Pulp Fiction shirt. Nancy, thank you. And to the rest of the Charlestons who took part in getting me these awesome fucking shirts, thank you. And Jules asked if he can have one of the burgers, which he does. And he goes, "This is a tasty burger." See that? If you can't read it, home of the tasty burger. I love this fucking shirt. Wasn't the shirt I was expecting, but I love it nonetheless. And after tasting the burger, he asked Brett, "Do you mind if I have some of your tasty beverage to wash this down?" Brett, scared, says sure. Then Jackson takes the cup with a straw and just not taking his eyes off of Brett. Jackson just gives the coldest stare I had ever seen in a movie. He sips and sips until the whole cup is dry except for the ice. And he's like, I am pretty sure that nobody ever thought that drinking a soda could look scary, but Samuel motherfucking Jackson did it. After playing nice, he asks the guy on the couch, Roger, I think, he asks what they have come for, and Marvin says it's over there, and then Jules goes, "I don't remember asking you a goddamn thing." Silence, and then not looking at the guy he was talking to, he's like, "You were saying?" And the guy on the couch, he just stutters. Like, this is like one of the most pathetic sounding stutters I've ever seen. The thing that they're looking for, which it's established that these dumb kids stole something from Marcellus Wallace. What did they take from the big crime boss? Nobody fucking knows. All we know is it's something in a briefcase. And the combination to the briefcase is 666. And when Vincent opens the briefcase, there's this illuminating light being shown on him from whatever is in there. And this has been an ongoing mystery for over 2 decades. What is in the briefcase? And Tarantino, he might have said it at some point, but I can't remember. He said at one point that it's whatever the viewer wants it to be. And a long ongoing debate amongst people is that the briefcase might have some kind of supernatural element to it. People guess this based on the light coming from it. I don't believe that, really, because it doesn't really gel with the overall tone of Pulp Fiction. But it is curious, like, what is making it glow? Originally, it was supposed to be diamonds, but Roger Avery said to Tarantino that just wouldn't be that original, so they came up with the idea of having it be ambiguous. I think it works well. I might be starting to feel the alcohol. I'm starting to feel a little something from my drink. I'm not drunk, but I'm starting to feel a little something. And what follows after the opening of the briefcase is one of the greatest, half disturbing but also half hilarious scenes in movie history. Brett tries to see if he can talk him and his friends out of the inevitable that's coming from Jules and Vincent, saying he has a good whiny voice for this character, saying, I know that things got bad, out of hand, and Jules just stares at him listening. He's like, mm-hmm. And as Frank Whaley talks, Jules pulls out his gun and just, without even looking, shoots the guy on the couch, and the guy just flops briefly. It's not that graphic, but it is kind of shocking, and for a moment you'll blink and wonder, wait, what just happened? And then Jules, smiling or just staring seriously at Brett's like, oh, I'm sorry, did I break your concentration? And Whaley, he's just getting hyperventilated, just pissed, scared. But Jules pretty much wants to have Brett know that he fucked up before he kills him. And Jules is sort of, ironically, a kind of believer in God. So he says to Brett, what does Marcellus Wallace look like? And Brett keeps going, what? And he goes, what country you from? What? What ain't no country I ever heard of? They speak English and what? What? English, motherfucker! Do you speak it? And he's like, yes. And then he's like, what does Marcellus Wallace look like? What? And then he just points the gun at him saying, say what again? Say what again? I dare you, I double dare you, motherfucker! Say what one more goddamn time! And he gives the answer, he's black, he's bald, does he look like a bitch? And when he said that, I lost it, laughing. And then Whaley goes, what? And then Jules shoots him in the shoulder. And that's part of the great thing about this scene. One moment, you're laughing. The next, you're shocked and you're disturbed. But then it can go right back to being funny. Like, this scene in Pulp Fiction does something that's very difficult for a lot of movies to do. It manages to both make you laugh, but also disturb you, put you on the edge of your seat at the same time. And I really love it when a fucking movie can do that. Whaley's character, he's crying in pain, he doesn't want to die, but at the same time, you don't really feel that much sympathy for the characters who die in the scene, because before this we got about 5 to 10 minutes of listening to Jules and Vincent talk and getting familiar with them, getting to know them, seeing their human side. With these characters, they just come off as snotty little college kids, and we don't really know much about them other than that they probably got in way over their head and now they're paying for it. Jules then, and this is the character's trademark, this is also probably the best known scene in Pulp fucking Fiction. Jules says to Brett, you read the Bible, Brett? And then he says, there's this passage I got memorized that I save for occasions like this. Ezekiel 25:17. The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of darkness, for he is truly his brother's keeper, and the finder of lost children. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who attempt to poison and destroy my brothers, and you will know my name is the Lord when I lay my vengeance upon thee. And then Jules and Vincent just fill Brett full of bullets all over. And when they shoot him up, the scene just, it goes all flashing colors. And that's the end of the film's opening. No one can... Jackson's delivery of this monologue is just... It's an epic moment for film history. And funny thing about this Bible passage that he quotes in the scene, it's made up. Yeah. I may be an atheist and I may have never read the Bible, but apparently neither has Quentin Tarantino. And people have backed this up. The passage is, for the most part, completely made up, except for the final line from, and I will strike down, and to the, I lay my vengeance upon you. That part is only kind of similar to one line from the actual Ezekiel 25:17. The rest, however, is apparently made up. And it's apparently from a majority of this stuff is apparently from another movie, a Sony Chiba movie. He was a kung fu star in the 70s. It's a great scene, great line. It just shows the true... just shows how Samuel Jackson, he is the ultimate badass motherfucker. Great, great actor. And that's pretty much the entirety of the first story in Pulp Fiction. And the last things I'll mention before I end this part of the review is Quentin Tarantino, when he originally went to John Travolta, and this is Travolta's own story, John Travolta says that Quentin Tarantino offered him the lead in the vampire movie From Dusk Till Dawn, which Tarantino wrote and at one time was going to direct. Robert Rodriguez ended up directing it. But John Travolta, he said he wasn't interested in horror. Should have offered him a sci-fi movie. And, but he said he might have been interested in Pulp Fiction, and remember how I said Vincent is the brother of Vic, Mr. Blonde from Reservoir Dogs? Well, originally Tarantino wanted to cast Michael Madsen as Vincent Vega to further tie in the idea that they were brothers. But Vic... wow. But Michael Madsen, I think he had already signed on to do Wyatt Earp, so he couldn't make it, and that's when Quentin went to Travolta and asked, would you like to work with me on this movie? And Travolta was like, yeah. And there's some variations to the next thing I'm going to say, but Travolta, he says that Quentin Tarantino's a huge board game lover, and he brought with him the Welcome Back, Kotter board game. For those who don't know, Welcome Back, Kotter was a TV sitcom in the 70s, and it featured John Travolta as one of the main characters. It was Travolta's breakout role at the time before he started making movies, and apparently Tarantino had the Welcome Back, Kotter board game, and
he and John Travolta would play it together on the floor, and of the set of the movie, apparently, in between filming, and not much to say, but awesome, cute, fucking A, man. Fucking A. I love Pulp Fiction, and I will continue to profess my love to this movie that has influenced me so much.